Welcome back to the new Packet Radio series. This video will be going over building a server to serve resources over a new Packet Radio. And don't be intimidated if you're new to IT or this type of technology. A server is just a computer that is serving resources to another computer. So in reality, it's pretty simple, but I've tried to keep everything up to this point as simple as possible. This series is targeted at people who aren't up to as much speed in the IP networking and stuff like that. I try to break everything down. That's why we're using Windows for everything. So in this video, I will still try to continue to keep things simple. However, just be aware that we are talking about server client networking. So it's a little bit more involved than the previous videos. So just try to hang in there. I'll try to make it as easy as possible. I want to give another shout out again to the Flag and Torch Society. They're the ones that pretty much loaned me this modem. One of the modems that I need for the pair for the IP link. And once I got that and got another one, realized I want one of my own, so I bought it. So again, big shout out to the Flag and Torch Society. If you guys are military affiliated or in the military and you're interested in ham radios and stuff, be sure to go check out their link there. In this video, we're going to be building a server. And there's a couple things that we're going to take into consideration. That in the US, the modulation on these modems are 20, which limits us to about dial-up speed. So when we're thinking of what we're going to be serving to clients, we have to take that in consideration. What's going to be, low bit rate for those clients to be able to consume. Because although we might be able to serve some images, we're not going to be able to stream video in real time. The next thing we need to consider is encryption. So now that we're combining IP and ham radio, we have to be really conscious of the things that we share over the air, right? It's really hard to find some technology that's not encrypted anymore because the internet as a whole has evolved and almost everything is leaning toward encryption of some type. So some of the files that we use in this video, some of the servers and stuff are things that I've looked for from a decade ago just because there's no encryption in them, and that's what we need to keep to stay lawful, right? So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to the computer that we're going to be using as a server. If you haven't been watching the videos before, that's fine. Just pretend we're starting with a new Windows install. I am going to go back into the networking a little bit, but let's go ahead and bring up our server computer, which is going to be the thing that is connected directly over Ethernet to the NPR master. And this doesn't have to be connected to the master. You could be in a situation where you are connected to a master of the client, and you could also connect a server to your client modem, and others would be able to access it over your client's IP address. But let's get into it and assume that we're serving it over the master. All right, so this is just a Windows virtual desktop that I have. Just pretend it's a real computer. As much as you guys are aware, it basically is a real computer. But the first thing that we want to take account for is if we are a server and we are giving files or we're giving things to other people, ordinarily you would want a static IP address for that. That way people always know the IP address to reach this computer. And we're going to go ahead and put that in by hitting the start button and typing in network connections. And then we're going to hit view network connections. And then we're going to right click your Ethernet port and go to properties. And we're going to go to Internet Protocol version 4 and hit properties again. And here we're going to put in our IP address. Now the rule here is that this IP address needs to be in the same subnet as your modem. So if you've been following along with the tutorials here, we're going to use 192.168.0.10. And the reason I use that, and as the subnet mask, we're also going to use 255.255.255.0. The default gateway, we're going to use 192.168.0.1. Now, the reason that we use the 0.10 is because that's in the same subnet as what our clients and everybody on the network is going to be in. The default gateway, this is just 0.1. If we were connected to the internet with this thing, which you can share internet connection over one of these masters, that would usually be 1.1 or whatever your home router address is. And we're just going to leave the DNS server blank. We're not using that in this video, maybe in the future. But just make sure that you have a static IP set, because otherwise how the client's going to know what IP address to connect you to. Now, I have took the liberty of creating this NPR Pack 5. And I'll provide a link to in the description for this. But it's just a bunch of files and configuration settings for things that I've already configured. It's already put together. If you don't feel comfortable downloading this, I'll put a link to each individual server file in the description. But I'm going to go ahead and right-click and extract this. And we're just going to go through the process of installing all of the server software here on this virtual machine. Again, I'll also place the link for every single file. If you guys don't want to just download the pack, I understand. But I just wanted everything as easy as possible for everyone to use, right? So I'm going to go ahead and open up the pack. And what we're worried about in this video is the master server files, because we've already went through the how-to, we've already went through the optimization in previous videos. So I'm going to open up this master server files, and here we have just a basic server stuff, right? So the first thing I'm going to take a look at is the FileZilla server. So what is FileZilla? It is a FTP server. It allows you to share files over the network. So I'm going to go ahead and double click this, and just so you guys are aware, I'm using an old version, which is the last version to before it started supporting TLS and all that encryption stuff, which is FileZilla Server Beta 0.9.60. I'm going to go ahead and just install the base server. I'm going to install it as a service, started with Windows, and I'm going to leave the default port and choose how the server interface should be started. This doesn't really matter as much. So now that's going to install the server, and it should automatically open. If it doesn't, you'll use the icon on your desktop. This right here, we're just going to hit connect here or whatever. What we're worried about is configuring this server to make sure that clients are able to connect. So I'm going to go up here to Edit, Settings, and we're going to go through this just to be sure that there's no encryption stuff on and make sure that there's a user setting. So the welcome message, if you guys want to like write a custom welcome message, if people connect to your FTP server, you can here. So the only thing here that you need to worry about is this FTP over TLS settings. You want to make sure that's disabled, and it should come disabled. After that, I'm going to go back up to Edit, and now I'm going to go to Users. So in order for our users to be able to get access to our files, we're going to have to add one, right? So I'm going to hit Add a User, and this time I'm going to type in ham user. You guys can use anything you like. I'm not going to make it a member of a group. So the account here is enabled. It's not a member of a group. Next, I'm going to go to Shared Folders, and for user ham user, I am going to hit Add under Shared Folders, and this is going to be the folder that can be accessed once that user connects over FTP or FileZilla. So I'm going to go into, I don't know, I'll do users, KN4MKB, or your username, and then desktop. And I'll just share the NPR pack. So now that is a shared folder. And I'm going to give permissions for ham user to read, write, and delete. And you guys can create different users and share this however you like. Also create directories and delete directories. And that's pretty much good. I've now given that user access to that folder. And once we connect to the server, I'll show you guys what that will look like. I'm going to hit OK. And after this, the server is running. It will start up when Windows starts up. You have a user that can connect. You have a folder and files that are shared. So that pretty much does it for the FTP. That's done. So I'm going to go back into the NPR pack master server files. And now we are going to install a TeamSpeak server. So if you open up the TeamSpeak server folder, you can find this TS3 server. I'm going to right click that and just hit run as administrator. And if you guys download my pack, I hit allow access on this for private and public networks. If you guys download my pack, the TeamSpeak server will already just start. It will automatically start itself once you run it. One thing that you need to take an account for if you're downloading the pack, and it'll be different here in a second, I'll explain if you don't. This TeamSpeak Creds folder, this has all of the keys for administrating the server. So this is something, obviously, I've shown it on screen, it's public. You might not want people to know. If you're unfamiliar, this will basically allow you to give administrator privileges to whatever user is in TeamSpeak. So since I've already started that server and I put it in the folder, I went ahead and just took the liberty of giving you that information so that you can change things. Now, if you guys are just downloading TeamSpeak, you can basically use the latest TeamSpeak server, TeamSpeak 3. So you just, feel comfortable downloading that. Once you download it, it'll look like a folder like this, and you just double click the TS3 server and it will give you all the admin credentials. So now our TeamSpeak server is running. There's one extra thing that we have to do to get TeamSpeak to run on startup, because you don't want to have to run these programs every time you start your computer. FileZilla is already installed as a service, it's okay. To get TeamSpeak to automatically start up, we're going to hit the start button and we're going to type in task. And we're looking for an app called Task Scheduler. So we're going to open that up and we're going to open up the Task Scheduler library. And for here, we're going to go to Action and we're going to create a basic task. And we're going to just call it Startup TeamSpeak Server. You can name it anything you like. It doesn't matter too much. When do you want this task to start? I want it when the computer starts, right? I don't even want to wait for a user to log in. We're going to start a program. And for the programmer/script, you want to browse to where you have your TeamSpeak server extracted to. So that's in my NPR pack. I'm going to open up master server files, TeamSpeak server, and I'm just going to click TS3 server here. And where it says start in, I'm actually going to take everything from C all the way up to that folder, and I'm going to copy and paste it in here with the quotation marks. So all I'm doing is I'm giving it a folder to start in, and that may not be necessary, but I do it just in case. So I'm going to hit next on that, and it should say trigger at system startup and finish. So now, whenever a computer starts up, that TeamSpeak server will automatically start up. We don't have to double click the icon anymore. So for all intents and purposes, now TeamSpeak is running. Now let's go back to the master server files and see what's next. The next thing is we're going to install our IRC server. Whereas FTP, FileZilla was good for sharing files, TeamSpeak is good for voice and text chat unencrypted. You can also do encrypted, but that's wrong. So the next thing is IRC server, which is basically strictly just chat. So for that, I'm using Unreal IRC 6.0.6, and it's in the server pack. I'm just going to double click to install it. It's pretty simple. We're going to accept the agreement. And then we're going to hit next on the default location, next. Now, here it says either create a desktop icon, and it says service support. I do want to install it as a service, and I want to install it when I want to start it when Windows starts. And I also want to restart it if it crashes. Now the TLS options, leave it checked to create a certificate, but we're not going to be using TLS because that's encryption. And I'll show you guys a little bit how that's going to work here in a second. But that's going to install. Now, if you guys are following along with the pack, you're going to notice that I have this Unreal IRC.conf file. Now, the configuration for our IRC is a little bit involved. Go ahead and run the makesir.bat at the end of the installation. And I'm just going to hit enter on all of that, and it should generate a certificate. Now, this is where things might get a little bit involved. The application's installed, but in order to run, you have to manually edit a configuration file. I've taken the liberty of doing this, so the link will be, you have to download the pack for the comp file. I'm not going to upload that separately, but if you right-click that and you edit it, or open with Notepad, you'll be able to go through and start changing some things. It's quite long. There's a lot of information here, but you just need to know that this configuration file is set for an IP address of 192.168.0.10. So if you do decide to change that, you're going to have to get in here and find where that's at to change it. There's also information about what it's called. If you want to dig into that, there's a lot of weeds to dig into. That's what I'm trying to say here. What we're going to do is just go ahead and put mine in there because I know it's going to work. So you're going to right click your new Unreal IRC, and we're going to hit open file location. And this should bring us to the folder. I'm going to go back from bin to the root folder. It should be in program files. And instead, I'm going to open the conf folder. Now, we are going to take my unrealirc.conf file, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it within this folder. Once that's done, the next time you restart your computer, Unreal IRC will start. It will use this configuration folder, and you will have a IRC server hosted on the 192.168.0.10. Tried to make it as easy as possible to just drag and drop that file in there. If you guys want to get more into it, I'm sure you guys, there's some people that are watching this video that are into the server stuff. Go for it. Next, after that, so now we have IRC running. We are going to look at next, after that, so now we have IRC running. We are going to look at running a web server. And to do that, I just created I downloaded a Python open source website template just as a proof of concept. But you will need to install Python. It's in the pack. If you guys are not using the pack, again, I'll provide the link for Python. I'm going to hit add this check for add python.exe to path, and I'm going to hit install now. And this might take just a minute. All right, I had to take a little break there because I forgot a file. So the next thing we're going to do is install an RDP program. Now I just added this here. It'll be in the version that you guys download, but we are going to be installing, also the link will be directly to the file if you just want to do it that way. We will be installing Tiger VNC 64, WinVNC 1.13.1. So some of you that are tech savvy may be wondering why we don't just use RDP that's built into Windows. Well, that's because it's encrypted. So with this, we can actually get an unencrypted remote desktop screen. Now, some of you that aren't tech savvy may be wondering what I'm talking about. RDP will allow us to remote desktop or view the screen of the master server, control it, edit configuration files over the radio. So we're going to go ahead and double click this Tiger VNC 64 WinVNC, and we're going to go through the installation process. You just want to make sure these two boxes are checked because that's going to handle making sure that it starts up when we start up with Windows. And you might see some boxes pop up here and there, but after that it should install. So if I hit the start button and I type in VNC, you should see stop VNC service, run VNC server, configure VNC server. We're going to go ahead and hit configure VNC server. Session encryption, we're going to check none, and we're going to uncheck anonymous TLS. We're just going to do no encryption. Authentication, we're going to do none as well. If you guys want to do standard VNC and add a username and password, that's fine. As far as I'm aware, it would still send the password in clear text. But it may... anyway, I'm just going to do no encryption. I'm going to do no encryption, no authentication. And next, I'm going to go to the Connections tab. This is the port that it's going to listen on. Under the desktop, just to help performance, I'm going to do remove wallpaper and disable user interface effects. And then I'm going to hit apply. And OK. Next, that's pretty much it. VNC server is installed. We're going to reboot once after all of this just to be sure everything takes. But now we have FTP and IRC. We have TeamSpeak, we have VNC, and that's pretty much all the stuff we're going to auto start. Now, we've installed Python, and the reason we've installed Python is because I have this little website example that if you guys open up the folder, website example, or once again, I'll just provide a direct link to this. So the only thing that I'm going to really hammer on that's left is this website example folder. And all this is just a website template. So it has a start web server.bat file. And when you click on that, it's going to prompt you to allow access to the network, which we're going to do. And it just starts a website running on port 80. Now, with all this now set up, I'm going to close out everything, and I'm actually going to go ahead and reboot. And then we're going to try it out. All right, so once the computer is back up, we should, you'll probably see this FTP screen. TeamSpeak server will be running. And I'm going to manually start the website example, which you can automate that through the task scheduler as well. But I'm going to go back into the master server files, website example, and we're going to go ahead and hit start web server. Now, for all intents and purposes, basically everything for this video example is running. So now we're going to pretend that we're on a client. And I'm going to go back into the, I'm going to close these windows out because we actually don't need them. Now, for the client programs, we just have to have the counterpart for all the server programs we just downloaded. So if you guys download the pack, again, all the files will be there. If you didn't, the links for those individuals will be below. So the first thing we're going to try out is TeamSpeak. So if you double click this TeamSpeak installer here, it will install TeamSpeak for us. And I've actually already did that. But this is just the client. So this is example, like I'm running it on the same computer here, but just pretend that like I'm running it on a remote NPR client somewhere else, right? I'm doing this for ease of use because it's easy to record everything. So once TeamSpeak is installed on your client or whoever you're trying to serve the server to, they can open it up and then go to connections, connect. Now, I'm using 127.0.0.1. That's because I'm connecting to the same computer I'm hosting it on. But if this is an actual client out in the field, you'll use 192.168.0.10 or whatever IP address you assigned to that server that we set up earlier. So anyways, once they connect to that, hopefully you'll see that you're connected to a TeamSpeak server. And from here, you want to make sure that the channel doesn't have encryption enabled. And you can also start sending chat messages. So you can do that here too. I don't have permission. You want to send a chat to the chat? Sure. Okay. It had to be in the right channel. So anyways, voice chat. That's what TeamSpeak is. The next thing I want to show you guys is FileZilla. So I'm going to go ahead and install FileZilla. That way we're able to access our FTP server. So we're just going to install it. And this is the client, right? We already did the server. This would be on a client somewhere. And some examples of this working is actually in our previous video of configuring the modem. I showed all the examples of this working over the air. So if you guys want to see it in practical use, go back there or into the next video. So this is FileZilla. So imagine I'm like a client, I'm out in the woods somewhere, and I need a file, a map file or something. I would type in the IP address of the host, which we've configured as 192.168.0.10. In this case, it's running on this computer, so I'm just typing in 127.0.0.1 again. Now, I forgot what we made the username. I'm going to call it ham user. I think that's what it was. And we're going to leave the password blank and the port blank. And I'm going to do not save passwords. Please enter a password for this server. Does not support FTP over TLS. Good, because we don't want encryption. So we were able to log in with ham user. The port, it just assumes it's the default port. The password, remember, we didn't set up a password. So now we are connected to our FTP server, and we're actually able to open this up and open our NPR Pack 5 folder, which I've built and shared. If you guys remember that we did that, that's what we shared. So imagine this is me just trying to get more client software for my client. I can go in and start downloading things. Like if I went in over to my desktop, I would just double click a file and it would download it over to my desktop over dial-up connection speeds. So that is FTP. Next, let's do the website. So if we're going to pull a website, imagine we're on a client. Say here again, I would connect to 192.168.0.10, but because I'm running on the same computer for this example, again, I'm going to use 127.0.0.1. And this should load the website template that I have. Now, in the real world, I saw that this took, I don't know, 45 seconds or so to download all the images, but this is just the website's example I downloaded from GitHub. You guys can get creative with this, right? So if you want to like list files, like if you want to list the files, you can also use this to serve files to people. If you guys are into the server stuff, you'll know more what I'm talking about. This is targeted for you guys, but imagine this as just being a website as an outlet to maybe even, and we might do this in the next video or two, you serve a website on your server and it has a list of all the services running on your node, and it has download links to the installer files for those services and all the IP address and ports and everything that you need to connect to them. That way, if you're setting up a client somewhere remotely, you're able to get access to that server, know what it's running, and also download the files from the server that you need to connect to it. We might do that practical use here in a few weeks. That might be a video where we like set up the master to serve everything, but this is the foundation. Yep, so that's the website. Let's see what else we have to play with here. We also have IRC. So ICE Chat Portable, that's the program I'm going to use. Again, I'll say it again, you can use the one in the pack, or the link directly to ICE Chat will be in the description as well. So to connect to a server, you can go to Quick Connect. Actually, to start out fresh, you'll need to go to Edit, and you'll have to put in a server name. I'm going to use the server. Obviously, is going to be again 192.168.0.10. In my case, I'm using 127.0.0.1. I'm using it on the same computer. So ham guy is the username. I just added the server, so it pops up over here. If you guys are connecting remotely, again 192.168.0.10. I'm going to right click it and hit connect. And now I am connected to the IRC server. And from here I can do /join to create and join a channel. And I'll call it like Hamnet, and it's going to put me in the Hamnet chat that I just created. And from here, you can do text chat with people, right? And we'll do another example of this working out in the field somewhere else. But you can also see a list of participants over here. And the magic of this is it's very low data mode. You don't have to worry about much bandwidth being used for this. So that is IRC. So I've showed you guys that. Next, the only big thing is going to be VNC. So if you go back to the NPR Pack 5, you'll see this Tiger VNC 64. If you install that, that will be the viewer for VNC. So we're gonna, in this case, I'm gonna view myself. But if I go to start, after you get done installing this, you double click it. Obviously, you're gonna go through next to install the program. If you type in start, and then type in VNC, there should be a program called Tiger VNC Viewer. And again, if you guys want to see all this working in real life over the radio, my last video in the series, at the end of the configuration, I have it marked in the video if you guys want to see what it looks like. But in this case, I'm connecting to myself. Normally, this would be 192.168.0.10 to connect to that remote server. 127.0.0.1 will connect to my own server. And this is just a test to make sure it's running. Oh, before we do that, go to options. Now under security, make sure TLS with anonymous certificates is disabled. Make sure TLS, whatever, all this is basically disabled except for none is checked under authentication. Now, you'll connect to the remote server. So pretend I'm like out in the field and I'm connecting to my ham radio. My server from my ham radio IP link is doing this because I'm connecting to myself, which is kind of expected, right? But ordinarily, if you guys want to see it working, look at the previous video on this. You'll be able to control and manipulate your server over ham radio over a remote desktop. All right, so I know that was kind of a doozy. If you guys are more into the radio stuff instead of the computer networking stuff, I know that might have been a lot of information to ingest. I tried to go through it as easy as possible. I tried to build the kit as easy as possible, but there are a ton of resources. The magic of this part is there's a ton of resources online for learning how to build your own server. This is just kind of a demo to show you guys what's possible, but there's a lot of resources online if you want to build your own. And the magic of this NPR technology is it makes it so easy to do IP over ham radio that almost anything out there is going to work as long as you have the bandwidth to support it and as long as you're not encrypting anything. So if you all gonna want to go look at server videos out there, there are a lot of different servers. There's a lot of different applications that you can host. Take a look at Arden and their user applications, see what they host. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this. But I wanted to cover at least voice, chat, files, websites, and remote desktop control. Other than that, there's going to be some more stuff coming down the pipe. What we're going to do now in this next video is a function test. And what I mean by a function test is we are going to, I'm going to set this server up and I'm going to connect it to a master. I'm going to connect it to an antenna outside. And we're going to pretend like we're in the field. I'm going to drive out however far I can get with a couple different antennas. And we're going to change out some orientation of the antennas and actually see in real life what kind of results I can get, what kind of resources I can use, and get an idea of like the actual functionality of this device at 4 to 5 watts of power, because I don't have any amplifiers yet. So that's going to be the next video. Pretty fun. After that, I'm going to do one more video on this series, which will bring it up to like 5 or 6 videos, and that video is just going to be all the fun stuff. We're going to be playing some video games over the ham radio, and that's going to be really cool stuff. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for holding in there, and let me know if you guys have any questions down below in the description. Or let me know if you guys have any questions down below in the comments.